Welcome back to One-on-One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Today we are joined by a very special guest. Monica McNutt is with us. Monica wears a lot of hats within the sports media industry, including being a studio analyst for MSG covering the Knicks, along with her work with ESPN as an analyst and reporter. Monica, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this has got to be such a busy time for you. Knicks season starting up, WNBA in the middle of a championship. What is it like to be Monica McNutt right now?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, Julia, dirty little secret. I'm very deliberate about carving in time to recharge, and I'm in one of those windows. I took the WNBA coverage up to the semifinals. My teammates have the finals covered, so I'm enjoying those at home as a fan and taking the minute to catch my breath before the Knicks do get going and the rest of the NBA season.
Love that. Well, I want to start with, how I personally became familiar with your work with ESPN, and it was 2021. It was the NBA playoffs. It was a play-in tournament, and I'll preface this by saying I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, so I am, borderline concerning level of a Grizzlies fan. And there is this document that kind of made its rounds on Twitter. It was 17 ESPN analysts and reporters making their picks on who is going to win between the Grizzlies and the Warriors in the play-in series. 16 people said that Warriors were going to win, and then one person guessed that the Grizzlies were going to win. And spoiler alert, Monica McNutt was the one person who guessed that the Grizzlies were going to win. So that was the moment where I was like, okay, like Monica McNutt is like literally her, and became my favorite ESPN analyst at that point, and it's held up till today, to be honest. And my question with that is like, did you know before the game or before the series that you were the only person to guess at the Grizzlies? And did you watch the series like a lot more intently because it could have potentially ended up being such an on-point take?
So funny on that, Julia. I think and I apologize if there's barking in the background. No, but lay down. My sister got a dog that I'm just now meeting for the first time. So my fur niece and my parents' dog, we're working on our relationship together. But anyway, the funny story on that one, Julia, is I think that may have been one of the first times. It certainly couldn't have been more than the third time that we get these polls internally from ESPN. We need your votes, right? And so I remember being like, oh, like, I didn't know that I was included in this. Like, so it was a surprise that I was asked. And I remember that morning really grappling with it because the Warriors and the Grizzlies had played to finish the regular season. And even though the Warriors had won that game, I want to say it was less than a week ago at that point, even though the Warriors had won that game, the Grizzlies, to me, had the personnel that can match up. I think Ja was enough of a problem. And I remember thinking for a young group, there's nothing more ideal than having an opportunity to run it back right away. Nova, stop. And I was just like, this looks like a team to me that is chomping at the bit. And I remember what Gino Auriemma said to me, because when I was at Georgetown, we ran into UConn at least 3, it may have been 4 times one year. And the last time, whether it was 3 or 4, we almost knocked them off in the NCAA tournament. And so years have passed, and Gino obviously remembers me from Georgetown, and now I'm in media. And I remember him saying to me, the more you get the opportunity to play a team, the closer you become to beating them. And so with that logic in mind, I was like, forget it. I'm going to pick the Grizzlies. Like, I think the Grizzlies got a shot to get it done. And sure enough, it held true. So there have been plenty that I've gotten wrong since then. But that one is funny that stands out to you because it certainly stands out to me. Girl side.
Absolutely. And I'll bother you for one more NBA related question. I had to ask you a question about the Knicks. Off season wise, it was a little bit quiet. RJ Barrett or Josh Hart getting extended, and then signing DiVincenzo. They have a lot of pieces, but as far as that superstar that I know Knicks fans have been waiting for, for years and years and years, it still hasn't come. But my question is do they need that superstar to build off the playoff run that they had last year, or is this rotation enough for you to be confident in this team?
So that's 2 questions, Julia. First question, do they need that superstar to build off of last year's playoff run? No, I don't think so. I think for the Knicks, it's going to be an opportunity to add by doing nothing. I think continuity and opportunity to grow together as a group is going to matter. Now, if we spin that question forward to contending for a championship, winning a championship, getting out of the Eastern Conference, all those teams have at least 1, if not 2, superstars. And so I do think that there's a piece that will have to be added to get to the so-called promised land. But do I think that this team has a really good chance to have improved by staying pat? Yes. So I think when I look at the folks that were available this offseason, I know some folks were curious about Jrue Holiday ending up in a Knicks uniform. To me, adding Jrue Holiday to this roster would what it would have cost you to bring him in does not get you over the hump as far as winning a championship. Would it have made this team better? Yeah, but I don't think that it was enough. And so I think it was smart of them to pass on that opportunity. And I know I've heard other Knicks fans, I've even heard my colleagues say, oh, you let the Celtics get better. If it doesn't fit for you, then you got to let these other teams play. Like, you got to let it rock.
Right.
I do think that there's a star that will come to the Knicks. Granted, I've not been entrenched in Knicks culture all of my life. I've been covering the team now for 3 full seasons, 5 years total. I have been okay with the free agents that they have passed on as of lately, whether you want to talk about Drew Holiday or even Donovan Mitchell. I think Jalen Brunson is really spectacular. And he's a guy that I think guys want to play alongside. So I'm okay with this patient approach right now.
Is there a specific superstar you're hoping they hold out for?
No, I don't have a specific. Well, I think I'm curious about Jaylen Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I know he just signed that extension, so now that is now pushed a little bit further down the line if it's possible. I am curious a little bit about Joel Embiid and the relationship that he previously had with guys in the Knicks front office now. But beyond that, Julia, for me, I think we are so reticent to let go of our stars as they age,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, I personally don't want to see a guy over 31, personally. And so I think we're now in that window of maybe the next star is emerging. No, maybe the next star is emerging in that 20s entering their prime bracket. And so we kind of got to wait and see.
And this is the last time I'll bring the Grizzlies into it, I promise. But I mean, you look at that team, like they drafted really well and, you know, they have a superstar now that they drafted. So maybe for the Knicks, it won't be necessarily, you know, going out and getting a free agent, but it might be, you know, drafting and building players up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Well, I think we're in a really cool time in the league.
100%. And moving over to the WNBA now, of course, the local New York Liberty are currently in the WNBA championship out in Las Vegas right now. First game started off pretty good. They went into the half up 3, but, you know, the wheels obviously kind of fell off for them in the second half. You know, looking at game 2, which is tomorrow, what can the Liberty do? Maybe not even to win, but to be able to compete for all 4 quarters.
They're going to have to play much better defense, Julia. It's pretty simple. I actually need to send an email to the folks at Synergy. For some reason, the game was like chopped up when I went to go watch it back. But offense has not been the issue truly for either one of these teams, right? They've got scorers abundant. Both coaches, I've heard both Sandy Brondello and Becky Hammond say, I'm not worried about offense, it's defense. I think that rings a little bit louder in the case of the Liberty, because when they're not defending well, it seems to be such a drastic fall off, especially against a team like the Aces, who's going to bring it on both sides of the basketball. So for me, the Liberty they gotta wake up their defense. I think there's more minutes to be had for Kayla Thornton as someone who's versatile and strong. And then frankly, when I think of the Liberty, Jonquel Jones is the key to this series in my mind if the Liberty are going to be successful.
100%. And then the other biggest news besides the championship that's happened this week in the WNBA is that there is now officially going to be an expansion, which is something fans have, you know, begged for so long. So it's definitely a good thing that they've finally expanded. But, you know, when you think of the other fights the WNBA is still yet to tackle, like charter flights, you know, salaries, etc., you know, where does your excitement level of, you know, this specific victory, being able to expand the teams, get more roster spots, you know, where does that land for you?
On a scale of 10, it's like a 6.
Yeah.
I personally think that this expansion move is a little premature. I think we need a robust 12 teams. And I understand the conversation about roster spots and your favorite WNBA or NCAA women's college basketball player not having a spot. I truly do. But I think until we have a robust 12 top to bottom, I mean, Indiana is turning a corner. And maybe some would argue that Phoenix had the talent to be far more competitive. They were navigating some other challenges for the past 2 years, and although it was great to see Brittany Griner back. Mm-hmm. But to me, when I look at the bottom 3 teams this past year, and Seattle was close. Seattle lost a bunch of games close. I want to see a robust 12, I think, before I jump to expansion. And I'm with you. Like, so now we add another West Coast city, and there's still commercial flights for these women that are 6 foot plus. Like, Okay. Yeah. And frankly, and I understand, listen, the WNBA has afforded me some really dope opportunities. I know ESPN is a partner with the WNBA, but I still don't know where all the money that was fundraised 2 seasons ago, I'm not 100% clear on where that was allocated.
Right.
And so I think of expansion as a shiny new toy, but how effective is it? How many batteries is it going to need to work? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say expansion. Expansion creates more responsibility.
Right.
And I think that there are some things that we need to do better by and for the current 12 before we just jump into adding teams.
And you make a really good point there because, I mean, before the season, it was like, okay, the Liberty and the Aces are going to go to the championship, and there was no question about it. And then they actually did. So there's definitely still like that level of like, you know, you make a good point with like the teams are turning corners, but I think we are still a little bit far away from there being enough parity to warrant possibly two other teams. So
right. So, and on that note, like, I'm curious, and forgive me because I haven't necessarily done all the research, girl. When I decided to take time off, I really take time off. But how are we expanding, right? Like, are you, you know what I mean? Like, are we grabbing, what superstar are you sending to this franchise to be the centerpiece? Or is that how it's going to go? Because is this about to be essentially a JV WNBA team in 2025? Right. Like, how are we expanding? So we'll see. There's a lot to be seen still.
And on that point about what superstar is going to, you know, make up these new teams, there is a New York Liberty player, New York Liberty superstar who is from the Bay Area. So my question is, you know, where's your concern level on Sabrina Ionescu potentially taking her talents home to the Bay when that team gets up and running?
I have zero concern. I mean, if that's the best fit, more power to her. From a marketing standpoint, she seems to be one that obviously draws, so that would be incredible. But what are we talking about? Are we talking about draws and marketing, or are we talking about competing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think Sav is a tremendous competitor. She's obviously worked her butt off. I gotta think, Julia, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but like, I don't know if singularly she is the cornerstone that I want.
It's valid.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's a scorer, games played on both sides of the ball. And I think she's improving and getting better on the defensive side of the ball. But, and this is what I'm saying, like, and somebody can tell me you got to expand at some point, you got to start somewhere. Build it and they will come, right? I can hear that argument as well. But if you ask me, it's too soon.
I mean, you've got the Golden State Warriors saying that they're going to win a championship in the first, 5 years, which is definitely a lofty goal for an expansion team. But definitely.
And even that, like, we saw that in the NHL with the Vegas Knights, right? Yeah. But like, they were an expansion team. They had high draft picks. Like, that was just such a perfect storm in terms of everything.
Yeah.
And I hope to God I'm wrong. I could be wrong. If that team won a championship in the first 5 years, let's go. Eat my words. Like, run this interview back. Like, I was big wrong. But these are the concerns that I have right now.
Understandable, totally. So my last question about women's sports before we move into, you know, questions about your career is, you know, women's sports is progressing in a lot of ways. There's no secret about that, viewership, investment, et cetera. But as we look towards the future, as things progress, what are some things that you want to see in regards to that continuous approval or improvement in, you know, the dialogue around women's sports in general?
I think there's still room for more buy-in from corporations, broadcast partners, marketing opportunities. Like, and I get it. Charters are expensive. I totally get it. But I wonder, I have this thought, you know, if you're Delta Airlines or, I don't know, insert airline, and you truly have this commitment to diversity and progress, like, have you stepped in and had a conversation with the league about what it might look like to partner? Or can it be done? Mm-hmm. And I could just not know, and maybe these conversations have been had, but that's one example that I think of that to me is an easy win in terms of marketing, right? And it could be more connected to the WNBA CBA than maybe I'm giving it credit for. So there's a lot at play. But even down to my company, which I love, and I think we do a great job of covering the WNBA, I'm not even as upset about WNBA Finals being on ABC up against football as I am about some of those games, semifinal games, potentially landing on Nova. Come over here. I'm so sorry. We've got a puppy. Come on. Do you need to go outside? I am a little bit more perturbed by some of those games landing on ESPNU or ESPN News because of TV windows, right? Like, and I get it. College football is the beat that it is, but like Coastal Carolina on E1 on a Thursday night when you got a WNBA semifinal,
Right.
like, what's up? You know what I mean? And so I think they're still here. You want outside? No? Okay, don't pee. So I think there's still room for us to demonstrate the equity that is being poured into women's sports.
And something that I find so interesting between the WNBA and college athletics is there's a lot of Division I teams that do charter flights. I mean, at Fordham right now, they charter flights for women's and men's basketball. So that kind of plays into the wider conversation of like college basketball players who are like, you know, at the top, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, who are deciding, making it really pretty tough to know, like, should I take a 5th year? Should I go into the WNBA? And as a former college basketball player yourself, you know, where do you lie on, you know, your opinion on those decisions being made?
You got to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
I do not like when the conversation pits the two against one another. Mm-hmm. The WNBA is beautiful. It is the best grown women in the United States playing basketball at the highest level. College basketball has some incredibly talented young women as well. Mm-hmm. Are they different? Yes. Should they be working in tandem? For sure. Has NIL absolutely changed the game? So I think the WNBA and the NCAA women's basketball needs to be working in tandem together. But the reality is, you can be a tremendous star on the collegiate level and not make the cut in the WNBA. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it, right? I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case for some of the stars that we've seen. I've heard some interesting conversations about Angel's game, Angel Reese. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case, but if the business is, I have a 5th year and I'm making X in college, I'm going to stay, handle your business. Like, I don't take that personal.
Right.
It's good business acumen in my mind. And so I would like to see a more through line of those leagues having the opportunity to work together. But basketball, as much as we want it to be kumbaya, just because it's women's sports doesn't mean you don't have to go take somebody's spot. Like, you have to go take a roster spot.
Yep.
So that's what it is.
Absolutely. And moving over, just a few more questions for you, Monica, about just your career in general. You know, when I'm listening to you on ESPN or MSG, I think the first thing that really strikes me is your personality is so just apparent on air. And sometimes that can be very difficult for people, you know, with the lights and the cameras and stuff. But for you, it's just, it's the vibes are that like the Monica on air and off air, the gap is very, very small. So my question is for you, was that something that's just come naturally to you from the beginning, or is it something you've had to work on throughout your career?
Both.
Fair.
I always say you take yourself with you wherever you go. Hey. And I'm very proud of that, right? But I think in the beginning of my career in particular, it wasn't necessarily about changing. It was about polishing. I started in local news. And so in local news, to a degree, you got to rein it in, right? Yeah. And so figuring out how to remain true to myself, but also be able to progress in my career in a medium that is based on communication required a little bit of work, right? I know Black folks call it code switching, whether you want to call it that on air or not. But I think when I started to leave local news, then there was a little bit more runway to be me. I remember my agent saying to me, right, when I guess we had just landed the first ESPN deal, and she was talking about my wardrobe, but it sticks out to me as like a bigger thing. She goes, "Mine, like, you're cool, you're young, you bring the energy, like, you don't have to dress like a 40-year-old white woman, right?" And I was like, KB, don't come in my wardrobe like that. But when my agent and I got together, I was starting to work in New York. I was starting to make ripples nationally. So she wasn't with me when I was trying to navigate local news with short hair, nail polish, and lipstick. Mm-hmm. Like, and there was this, okay, I'm gonna give you this, so I'm gonna tone it down on this, right? So there was this give and take, so to speak.
Right.
And so now ESPN and MSG have really allowed me to lean in. But I think part of me being able to lean in is my title as an analyst.
Right.
Because I get to talk basketball. And so what you hear is the passion that I truly have for that. If I was a host, maybe I would have to be a little bit more cookie cutter. Although when I've had the opportunities to host, people have just allowed me to be me. And so I think what you guys see is true to me, but it is also something that I've had to earn by doing good work.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, in the intro at the top of the conversation, you do a lot. And you mentioned in another interview before that, even coming up, there wasn't a place you wouldn't work for, which really spoke to me because, it really is about getting opportunity and reps. So, for young sports professionals too, like the busyness is still there. I think it's just the quality of work that you get as you become more and more successful. So, as someone who's been very busy for a very long time, how do you personally manage your work life schedule? And then if you have any advice for young sports broadcasters who are also trying to figure out that balance, asking for a friend, of course, if you have any advice there.
Well, Julia, I would tell your friend.
Right. Of course, my friend.
I think a big piece of it to me, and I remember saying this at Association of Women in Sports Journalists conference one year, we should take a cue from the athletes that we cover, right? Mm-hmm. They are in season, there's off-season training, they also take care of their bodies, they take time to rest. Our mind, our skill, our creativity, our craft is similar, right? There was a season for me where I very rarely said no. Prior to ESPN, I didn't say no to anybody. You got a check, let's talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the check was actually worth it. Sometimes it was below market value, but in my mind, it moved me closer to my goal, so I said yes. And so that was a season of hustle and grind, right? When I got to ESPN and started to have opportunities beyond ACC Network, there was also a big season of yes. Like, yes, I'll do every show whenever you want me to do it because I'm now playing on that trying to play for that next contract, right? Where I am now, I get to be a little bit more judicial with yes and no. And I felt so good having a conversation with one of my producers over the course of the summer that there's not a lot of flack when I say no. And he was like, Mom, because you say yes more than you say no, and we know that you're working, mm-hmm. right? And so just like the athletes that we cover, you know that when you're in season, whether it's your hustle season, your grind season, whether it's literally the calendar season of the sport that you cover, mm-hmm. it's a bunch of yes. And you got to do what you can to take care of yourself. But then you look and say, hey, I'm not feeling 100% sharp. I need to take some time to rest. I need to take some time off, right? And so I think the earlier in your career that you can train yourself to understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Rest, recovery, time off is just as important as doing the work so that you can stay fresh, so that you can stay in tune and lean into the other things that make you who you are so that you can have creative juices that are flowing. The earlier I think you grasp that and kind of create what are going to be your principles as a journalist, the better off you can be. And I think I don't take for granted my ability to say no at this point in my career. Mm-hmm. But I think even at the beginnings of your career, having a healthy relationship with no is paramount. That is to be able to use it to protect yourself because X opportunity doesn't necessarily fit, or I don't like the experience of working with this person. And also to be able to hear it and then not decimate all of your dreams. You're going to get plenty of no's along the way, but you got to train your mind to think of them as a ladder to your yes, because it truly only takes one yes to get that momentum going.
Absolutely. And my next question, and this will be the last one before we wrap up. You work a lot, but you of course, you just mentioned finding a work-life balance. What are your favorite things to do outside? It could be outside of sports, but just anything that's not work. What are your favorite things to do on a day off?
I love fitness. I'm currently, I still teach cycle when I have the opportunity. I love these little four-legged furry people furry beings in front of me, even though, stop it, act right. Fitness is a big thing for me. Like I said, I teach cycle when I can. I love my kettlebell workouts. I'm getting into Pilates. Get out of her butt. Stop. Dogs. Anyway. And honestly, Julia, for me, like if I say I'm doing nothing, that is not an invitation for my friends to be like, oh, come do this. No, right. No, I'm doing nothing. Like there's no music in the house. There's no TV on, or maybe there is music. It's just jazz, like sensory release. I'm gonna take a bath. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna sleep. I love sleep. Sleep's amazing. I'm gonna be with my fiance, like whatever it is, I carve out time to intentionally stop it all.
100%. Well, Monica, appreciate your time more than anything. We'll be right back with more one-on-one.